Okay. So, let's take a look here. Did anyone figure out what was going on with the particle system? I think I figured it out, but for some reason it looks like I have no particle system here anymore. All right, do I still have fog? No, don't have fog either. Okay, so let's do a little more, huh? Okay. Yeah, so a few little odds and ends, okay, before I we'll talk about the assignment for a week from Friday. We'll have time to do some grading, I'm sure, if you guys are wanting that. Okay, so let's go. Let's put the smoke in. Okay, let's kill the thing that turns it off, so it'll go indefinitely. Okay, now, if we go in and into the scene right now, all right, you don't look at the smoke against the white cloud. Oh, looks like the other smoke actually was there. There's two of them. Okay, anyway, there's two of them, and they're both fine. There's nothing wrong with those textures. All right? Whereas if you turn on the fog, let's go back and turn on the fog. How do we do that? Window, rendering, lighting settings, all the way to the bottom. Fog on. Okay, try again. Now I've got this ugliness. What's going on? Who can explain that? Okay, so clearly there's some bad interaction between the smoke and the fog. Okay, and I'm not sure I understand it 100%, but if you think about the way fog works, again, it's 1980s fog. I mean, it's kind of this effect's been around forever. When the scene is rendered, for every pixel we track the color. For every pixel we also track an index of how far it is in the scene, right? We should have learned that from graphics class. That's how we know this is in front of that, and so it should be the color, that pixel should be the color of the chair that's in front, not the table that's invisible behind, okay? So based on that distance value, the fog is applied. We shade that pixel further away, more foggy. Up close, less foggy, okay? What I assume is happening here, at least part of the story, is that those puffs of smoke are actually quads, right? The quads you see, the sharp edges that you see there are the edges of those quads spinning up, okay? And the distance to that quad must be registering and affecting the fog application, okay? So it's saying, oh, there's something there, let's apply some fog to that location, and that's what you're seeing, because you can tell the texture doesn't have gray on the edges of the texture, as it shouldn't. Should be a little puff of black in the middle and clear on the edges. It's fine, okay? But it has to be the fog that's doing that. So, learning point is, okay, you can't have cheap 1980s fog with your particles, but that's a small loss, I think, you know? Turn off the fog, stay with the particles, and if you really need fog because obscuring things is very much to the point of what you're trying to accomplish, maybe consider another particle system. It's going to look a lot nicer anyway. It'll swirl around. You can have all kind of effects on it that are a lot more like a real heavy fog. All right. So, good. So one thing killed off my list to talk about today. Go away. Foul fog. Okay. What else? So we talked about the skybox, but we didn't look at the texture. Let's look at the texture. Here it is. I'm so happy. That is a huge texture. It's a 4K texture, so it's like one pixel for every lighted element on your 4K TV, right? There's a lot of them, okay? And another thing that's special about this texture is that it is a floating point texture. Okay, so if you've got old GIMP, like I had GIMP 2.8, I don't even know, but obviously I've not been paying much attention to GIMP because they're on like 2.10.10 or something like that now. When I downloaded the new one, now they're able to read floating point textures for the first time. So that's That's why I'm able to show you this. Okay? Now, what's the difference? So on a normal, in the conventional image, how many bits does it have to represent how much red is in a particular pixel? Anyone know? How many bits? Bits and bytes, right? 8 bits, I heard it. 8 bits, 1 byte, okay? All right, so 1 byte with 8 bits, how many different values, how many different amounts of red could there be in a pixel? 256, okay? Now that may seem like a lot. It's been enough for most of my lifetime. In fact, we started out with a lot less, but it's not enough if you really want to deal with all the differences in brightness there are in a real world scene. I mean, from this room to the brightest sunlight outside. Okay, it's just not even remotely enough. Okay, so newer game engines support floating point textures, where we use a floating point number for the amount of red and blue and green, and of course transparency. By the way, I don't mean to diminish the other colors. We got to focus on something. Okay, so then how many bits do you figure they're going to have in a floating point texture that represents red as a floating point number?
8 bytes.
Random guess?
8 bytes.
Maybe, it's probably at least 4 bytes though. 32 bits, maybe 64 bits. It's possible. Yeah, I don't know. Good question. It's way, way, way more, right? Way more. 4 times the amount of storage, and that doesn't mean 4 times the amount of values. It's scaled way more. It's exponential scaling in terms of the number of values. So we get, an astronomical number of different amounts of red that we can now have in each pixel, and blue and gray and everything. Okay. All right. So so that's why the extension on this texture, actually, this is the one that I gave you, is HDR. That's high dynamic range. That's the whole idea. That's what they're talking about. High dynamic range is how much variety in the values can you handle. Well, with floating point, you can handle a lot. And the other thing about this is just as a visual effect. Do you guys see what I'm talking about when I say that the texture is Greenlandized at the top and the bottom? Can't see it at the top. Look at the bottom. Right? You see that just doesn't look like the rest of it. Okay? And that's just because it's just being stretched to heck, especially as you get down toward the very bottom. All right? All right. What else did I forget to tell you? Oh, at least one other thing. Yes, it's toward the end of the week, so it's time for a party. Yes, a terrain party. Terrain.party is like a thing. It's actually a tool. I think it's a tool that a Cities Skyline fan. Do anyone know the game Cities Skyline? It's a city simulator. Sim City used to be a thing when I was younger.
Yeah.
Okay, heard of Sim City?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Sim City's kind of fallen off the map. There's not enough money in simulating cities to make a big company like Electronic Arts happy anymore. So a littler company picked up the idea, and the king city simulator right now is called City Skyline. So if you want to build a city, well, you might want to build it on a map of the terrain near home, or wherever it is you want to, where a real city actually is, right? So you can deal with it. I mean, part of the interest in, if you want to be pretend you're the mayor, but really more like the god of San Francisco, I mean, part of that is that you're really limited for good buildable terrain in San Francisco. You have, a lot of water around. It's not easy to connect things. That's part of the challenge. So to make it interesting, you might like to actually use the real terrain San Francisco is built on and see if you can build a better San Francisco, right? So this hobbyist, I guess, built this site called Terrain Party. I am guessing that this person is, see what you think. Where in the world do you think they possibly could be when you load this in and the map comes up in some random place in Finland? I'm thinking they're from Finland. Okay? But if you don't want the terrain of Finland, not to worry, because you can just go and you can drag this thing all over the place. You can scroll out. It will become very small. I mean, you literally, I don't know a better way than to drag it across the Atlantic.
I found America.
Yeah, there we go.
discovered America. All right, and now we can zoom in, and you can mess with all kinds of different settings for that. This is what I'm going to get when I ask for the terrain, which I'm going to do, because this is the other thing that's nice to do also for us, right? You might want, okay, for a small scale shooter, it doesn't really matter what your terrain is. Honestly, some kind of typical terrain is going to be as good as any real terrain. But if you wanted to do something bigger scale, again, I gave you some latitude with your project. You can propose whatever you want at least. Then it might make sense to actually use some real terrain. So how do you actually suck it down and get it into Unity? Okay, it's a little bit tricky, but not much. It's pretty easy. Okay, so what you do is, after you set the settings, so this is like an 18-kilometer box. Okay, great for a city, not so great for a first-person shooter where you're going to have to walk the 18 kilometers. Okay, plus it's not military quality. Don't expect 1 meter or 3 meter resolution terrain, which you could get if you needed it for operational uses. Okay, it's not like that. It's more like 30-meter terrain. So you get like the general lay of the land. You still have to go in and put the little boulders and rocks and stuff like that in by hand anyway. Okay, but nonetheless, it is what it is. Okay, so I'm going to call that terrain Monterey and download it. It's even reasonably fast. And if any of you have ever dealt with the U.S. Geologic Survey, like downloading data from them, which is like a huge pain in the ass. It can be like a week project to get the data. They're supposed to be web friendly and stuff too, but it's totally not. Okay, look at this. I mean, we're done. They did it. It's seconds. I have my data. I'm good to go. Okay, this guy's not taking any money, so I don't know. Maybe he works for City Skylines and is getting some money indirectly, but they're certainly not getting paid by the map. I can tell you that. All right, so I can go down in here. If you open that thing up, you see there's a bunch of different maps in there. The one I usually grab is the merged map. I think that's 30-meter resolution, where they've actually taken multiple data sources and tried to use it. No data source is perfect. There's errors in all kinds of data that exists in the world, right? And there'll be holes. There'll be just weird bumps that don't exist in nature. But if you look at multiple sources and kind of line them up and kind of take the average, you can get rid of a lot of that. So I like this merged a map here, so I'm going to grab that guy and get him out of the zip archive so we can play with him. I'll just put him in my download directory there. Okay, so okay, it's probably a floating point texture, but okay, so here we can see some of the thing that looks basically out here, like that. Okay, so there's our terrain. Good. That's a picture. Okay, now how do we actually get it into Unity? Okay. Well, the first thing is you cannot bring it in. Well, actually, there are tutorials. If you insist on bringing it in as a ping, I believe that is already it's a ping. There is a way to actually bring that in by using scripting. Okay, so that's your choice. You either have to go out and get or learn how to build the script and make that work, or you can just convert the file to a raw, what's called a raw format file, which is basically like the raw output from a digital camera, and kind of get it in for free. I'd rather do that. Okay, so I'm going to bring it into GIMP. So let's go over here. And that's Finland there, if you're wondering. Let me go and find my, where is it? Recently used, maybe? Flight map, where's my Monterey? All right, I guess I'm going to have to maneuver to it. Let's see. Users, my name, downloads, where is it? Wow. All right. Okay. And there we go, Monterey. All right, so now it's in GIMP, back here. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to need to do is convert it. Now, again, GIMP is really weird. So they call it exporting no matter how you save it, unless you're saving it in their native file format. So you want to go to export as, and usually we can see if it works. It wasn't working. If you've got an older version of GIMP, this isn't going to work. You're going to need to go into the select file type by extension and find the raw file in there to make it work. Usually you just type in the extension and it works, but it never used to work for raw files. Let's see if it works this time. Yeah, it looks like it's going to work. Okay, so the newer version of GIMP is better in a few ways. Okay, so now I should have that raw file in my directory. You can see Windows doesn't know what to do with it because it really is. It's not the file type that anybody uses. It's totally uncompressed. It's probably, actually, the file size isn't too bad. Okay, all right, so now we got a raw file, which I claim is useful, but how do you actually bring it in? Let me show you. So you want to be in your Unity. I'm going to need a new scene, so let me just go and add a scene here. Let's go with scenes, create scene.
Export as a standard or planar RGB type?
I don't know. It just said raw. If you say the raw extension, and then I just took the default settings on the export window that came up, and it worked okay. So, all right. So this will be Monterey. All right. So here we go. Let's go to Monterey. Save my old scene. Okay. Here it is. Nothing's here. New scene. All right. So what do? Well, you got to have a terrain object. That's a given. So we're going to go in 3D, bring in a terrain object. The difference is, and you probably want to size it. Now that's 18 kilometers of terrain that's going to be jammed onto what's really 1 kilometer here in terms of Unity. I'll leave it to you to figure out the best way to do that. I haven't done this in a serious way for a real project, so I don't know. I don't have the smarts to say what is the best practice here. Okay, I'm just going to be happy to bring it in and see that the data got in. But if you really care, you're going to want to scale your terrain, maybe deal with how many posts it has in advance to kind of more or less line it up with the data that you're going to bring in. Okay? All right. Now, but how do you actually bring it in? Well, it's super easy. You just go over to the gear here, which we've been there before, right? When we wanted to play with the length and width of the terrain, which is basically the number of height posts in each dimension. And you see there is an import raw here. And there's an export raw, by the way. So you could take something that you hand-shaped and export it raw, bring that into GIMP and convert it into a ping if you wanted to, put it on the web or give it to somebody. So this is all fungible. Okay, we go import raw. Let me find my file. Downloads. Okay, here it is, Monterey height map. Bring that in. Again, not sure about these import settings. That probably is detecting what's in the raw file. So it's got 1081. I've got about 1,000 by 1,000. I'm not sure if that's. So I honestly am not sure if that's a good thing. I think it actually is going to work okay to have it not quite match up. But maybe it would be better if I tried to match it up exactly. But even so, I'm liable to just be off by 1 because I don't know exactly how they're counting in each case. So I'm not going to bother with it. I'm just going to say, we'll trust you. Go ahead, bring it in. Okay. Now what you see is, first of all, I'm seeing some noise out there. What the heck is that on the edge of my map? That's way out in the ocean. Look at this edge here, too. That's also out in the ocean. The other thing to say about it is, this is not, it looks like the moon. I mean, it doesn't even look like Alps. I mean, it's just ridiculously high. So this terrain height is obviously way, way off. Okay. So let's try, bring it down quite a bit. Now, usually for a game, just scaling it by eye is good enough. If you're doing something real where you really care, what can you see from the top of that mountain? All right, then you better try to make sure the height actually matches well with what's in that file. Okay? All right, so there you go. Now, you can see it's definitely not perfect, right? So the next thing you probably want to do is, you see you got all that ugly stuff there? What can we do about that? Anybody?
Should we just flatten it?
Let's just flatten it out. Yeah, let's go in here. Let's go. There is a flatten thing here. There is like a set height, I think, which maybe you could use. You go. If I say set height, I pick a big window like that. I want to make the height 0. Let's see what happens. Opacity. I probably want that all the way up, so it's maximum flattening. All right, there we go. Fix. But if it's that ugly out in the ocean, there's going to be plenty of errors on land too, right? I mean, that's a given. Boom. All right, but that's already much better. Okay, cool. All right, another way you can generate terrain. Fast, easy, useful. All right. What else did I have on my list here? All right, so that's it. So unless there are questions that I didn't get to, if you're feeling reasonably confident about terrain, then we're good. Let's look at what we actually have for an assignment here for next Friday. All right. So here's what I would like. Again, some of this is definitely optional, but I just wanted to give you a range of options here. So I think all the stuff that's not marked optional, you can do in one form or another. It's all relatively straightforward, as I hope you've seen. Give me a height map. That just means the height of the height of the terrain. Either do it with the modeling tools and/or real terrain data, or maybe a little bit of both. Okay. So, but you create it. Don't just import somebody else's cool terrain. Apply at least 3 different textures. Paint those on in your best artistic fashion. You've seen mine. I know it's pretty bad. Oh, I don't know if you've ever seen that term. It's actually called terrain splatting, that particular kind of painting, because we're not actually painting, right? I mean, we're really just saying which texture to use where. It's not really painting, so that's a new word, splatting. It's terrain splatting. I want at least one group of trees with one or more types. I want at least one type of small ground cover. So grass would be the easy one. If you do more, then you deserve more credit. Okay. I want some water somewhere, be it a part of a sea, a lake, a pond, stream, whatever, some water. I want some wind, so I should be able to see the trees are blowing in the wind. And then you could do some extra stuff. So if you put in we did particle systems already, but if you put one in and have it affected by the wind, I think that would be a good exercise. And then if you really want to push beyond, if you think this terrain thing is just super mind-blowing and you want to be the master of it, one thing I've always wanted to do, but I've never had time, and it's not trivial, but you can actually make your own speed trees. There's some decent tools in there. I mean, you don't have to, the tools are not like Blender, like, okay, here, you can make any shape. So make a trunk, make leaves, make twigs, make the whole tree. It's not like that. It's much more constrained than that, but it still helps to have an artistic eye. So, but anyway, you can research that yourself, and the beauty of it is that if you follow that path and you actually make it, you'll end up with a speed tree, which could be scaled into a whole forest of trees. Okay? In theory, never done it. Never done it. Would love to know. The tutorials don't make it look too bad. It's a little complicated, but it doesn't look too bad. But what's the reality? Maybe I can learn from you. Okay, so that's that. Yeah.
I have one Unity just use question. So obviously you've built very large scenes before. How do you incrementally save or version control so that if you import something new, it doesn't eat your entire scene that you just created?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there is danger of that. You might just copy your whole directory or copy your assets over. I mean, it's pretty caveman, but
okay.
If you use like a version control system, that would be another kind of option. And then a version control system would know exactly what files you saved, and it would just make copies of only the things you saved, so there wouldn't be any redundant saving going on. So you could think about doing that as well. But honestly, that isn't so far removed from caveman if you're slightly careful. If you kind of know, well, I only touch things in this directory, so I'll make a copy of that directory versus just the whole project. Yeah, it's not very nice, but that's the way. And that's a great question, though, because with big objects like this is where you get to the point where don't assume just everything's going to be undoable, because it probably won't be.
I've collided with that issue.
Yeah. Other questions? All right, do I have any customers for early checkout today? All right, at least one. All right, good enough for me. I'll be here tomorrow as usual. And we'll call it done.